polls closed in Kentucky a short while ago, and CNN can now make a key projection. CNN projects that incumbent Senator Rand Paul wins the Republican primary in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Paul easily prevailing against lesser-known challengers as he seeks a third term in the U.S. Senate. The often provocative, libertarian-leaning Republican will now face the winner of the Democratic Senate primary in November. As we count down to the first results out of North Carolina, we're getting new information about the mood of the country. What's on the mind of voters in the Tar Heel State and all across the United States? Stay with us to find out on this exciting election night in America. All right, John King, thank you so much. And we are just moments away from the end of voting in North Carolina at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, awaiting the first results from the pivotal U.S. Senate primaries. On the Republican side, this will be the first big test of the night of former President Trump's endorsement power. So let's get a key race alert. Well, it's too early to call the Republican Senate primary in North Carolina right now, where Trump-backed Congressman Ted Budd faces former Governor Pat McCrory and former Congressman Mark Walker. It's also too early to call North Carolina's Democratic Senate primary, where the party has essentially cleared the field for its preferred candidate, former state Supreme Court Chief Justice Cheri Beasley. Now, in the battle for the House, it's too early to call the race in North Carolina's 11th congressional district, where the controversial incumbent Congressman Madison Cawthorn is facing multiple Republican primary challengers. And it is also too early to call the Republican primary in North Carolina's 13th congressional district. That's where political newcomer Bo Hines is trying to win a seat in Congress with Trump's endorsement. Aaron? And we have a key race alert for you right now in the Tar Heel State of North Carolina on the Republican side for the Senate Republican primary race. Congressman Ted Budd is in the lead. He is 3,718 votes ahead of former Governor Pat McCrory. Budd has 50.4% of the vote, McCrory 35.6%. Former Congressman Mark Walker pulling up in third place with 5.8%. We should caution you, it's early. This is with only 3% of the vote in. But as of right now, Ted Budd, well, more votes came in. 50.2% of the vote over McCrory 33.3%, Walker with 9.0%. On the Democratic side, for the Senate race, the former state Supreme Court Justice Cheri Beasley is way ahead with 88.9% of the vote over Rhett Newton, who has 0.9% of the vote. The Democrats in the Tar Heel State basically cleared the race for Cheri Beasley, and she is more than 50,000 votes ahead, John King. And we have a new projection to share with you right now. CNN projects that Cheri Beasley wins the Democratic Senate primary in North Carolina. She's the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina State Supreme Court. She will face the Republican primary winner for the seat now held by a Republican, the retiring Senator Richard Burr. If Beasley wins in November, she would be the first black U.S. Senator to represent North Carolina. And CNN can now make a major projection in the state of North Carolina. CNN projects that Congressman Ted Budd wins the Republican Senate nomination. That's a key victory for a candidate endorsed by former President Trump. Budd defeating two political veterans, including the state's former governor. Budd will face the winner of the Democratic Senate primary, Cheri Beasley, for the seat now being held by retiring Republican Richard Burr. And we have a key race alert for you right now. In the House of Representatives, Congressman Madison Cawthorn is facing serious headwinds in his race for re-election. He is losing right now with 36% of the vote in to State Senator Chuck Edwards. Chuck Edwards with 37.8% of the vote, 3,944 votes ahead of incumbent Congressman Cawthorn. Now, there is still quite a bit of vote to count, but that is a significant moment for Madison Cawthorn. He better hope that trends do not continue that way. All right, John King, thanks so much. We're closing in on the end of voting in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the first results from the highest profile Senate race tonight. We'll see how the Trump-endorsed candidate, TV Dr. Mehmet Oz, fares against two very competitive challengers, including the late surging conservative Kathy Barnett. Here's our key race alert. It is too early to call Pennsylvania's Republican Senate primary as of now. The very competitive three-way race pitting Dr. Mehmet Oz against former hedge fund CEO Dave McCormick and conservative firebrand Kathy Barnett. On the Democratic side, it is also too early to call the Senate primary, featuring Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, Congressman Conor Lamb, and State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. It is also too early to call the Republican primary race for Pennsylvania governor. Doug Mastriano, the Trump-endorsed candidate, is running against former Congressman Lou Barletta, former U.S. Attorney Bill McSwain, and businessman Dave White. But we do have a projection to make in the Democratic governor's race. And CNN projects Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro will be the Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania governor. Shapiro coasts through uncontested. He will face the winner of the Republican gubernatorial primary in the fall.
Let's go back to Jake. Jake, I understand you have a key race alert right now.
I do, Wolf. Let's take a look at what these Pennsylvania voters are actually thinking. Let's go to the Republican Senate primary right now. CNN, with 1% of the vote in, has Dave McCormick in the lead position, 42.6% of the vote. He is 2,418 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, the Trump-endorsed candidate, the TV doctor, who has 22.7% of the vote, and firebrand Kathy Barnett has 15.6% of the vote. That is only with 1% of the vote in, but right now at this hour, Dave McCormick has the lead. On the Democratic side, John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor, has a whopping 57.4% of the vote. He is 13,604 votes ahead of Congressman Conor Lamb, who has 39.7% of the vote, and State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta from the Philadelphia area, who has 2.1% of the vote. That is with a minority of the vote. Now let's take a look at the Republican gubernatorial primary right now, who's going to run for governor against Josh Shapiro, the incumbent, the Democrat who's the Attorney General. Bill McSwain is in first place right now. He has 26.7% of the vote. He is roughly 1,800 votes ahead of the guy in second place, Doug Mastriano, the Trump-endorsed candidate, who has 11.6% of the vote. Former Congressman Lou Barletta is in third place with 10.9% of the vote. Businessman Dave White has 10.8% of the vote. This is with only 1% of the estimated vote in right now. We're also waiting right now for, oh, look at this, in North Carolina. Let's look at this. Incumbent Congressman Madison Cawthorn is still in second place. Madison Cawthorn is behind State Senator Chuck Edwards. Chuck Edwards in first place with 38% of the vote. Now it's 38% of the vote. He is 4,088 votes ahead of the incumbent Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn, who has 27.3% of the vote. That is with more of the vote in than the last time we looked at this. This is 37% of the vote.
We've got a key race alert in North Carolina. There you see State Senator Chuck Edwards right now in the lead with 37.8%. Scandal-plagued Madison Cawthorn right now behind with 27.6%. As the votes continue to come in and be counted, we should point out that Senator Tom Tillis endorsed State Senator Chuck Edwards instead of Madison Cawthorn in this race.
And I have a key race alert for you right now for the Pennsylvania Senate race. On the Republican side, hedge fund CEO Dave McCormick remains in first place with 36.2% of the vote, about 4,500 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor, who has 23.1% of the vote. And in third place, as of right now, Kathy Barnett, the radio firebrand, who has 17.2% of the vote. That's with only 2% of the estimated vote in. Still a lot of votes to count. Now let's go to the Democratic side, where Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman remains in the lead with 51.8% of the vote, almost 35,000 votes ahead of Congressman Conor Lamb, who has 33.3% of the vote, and state legislator Malcolm Kenyatta, who is at 12.1% of the vote. That's with a little bit more of the vote in, about 16% there. And we have a key race alert for you from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Let's look at the Senate standings as of right now on the Republican side. Former hedge fund CEO Dave McCormick is up with 32.1% of the vote. He is about 5,600 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, endorsed by Donald Trump, who has 22.1% of the vote. Right now, carrying up the rear, Kathy Barnett with 19.3% of the vote. But that's only with 4% of the vote in as of now. But Dave McCormick right now in first place. Let's look at the Democrats. On the Democratic side, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman still with a very healthy lead, 54.2% of the vote. He is more than 62,000 votes ahead of his closest challenger, Congressman Connor Lamb from the Pittsburgh area, who has 30.7% of the vote. Bringing up the rear, State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta with 10.8% of the vote. Let's take a look at the Republican gubernatorial primary right now with former U.S. Attorney Bill McSwain in the lead right now with 26.9% of the vote. He's about 5,700 votes ahead of businessman Dave White, who has 16.9% of the vote. Former Congressman Lou Barletta with 13.7% of the vote. And Doug Mastriano, one of the strongest Trump supporters in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, bringing up the rear with 12.5% of the vote. That is only with 4% of the estimated vote in.
Welcome back to our special coverage. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Philadelphia. Take a look at this. We've got a key race alert. The Senate Republican primary here in Pennsylvania. Look at this. Dave McCormick, the former CEO of a hedge fund, he's ahead right now. He's ahead by almost 6,000 votes. He's got 32.1%. Dr. Mehmet Oz, 23.2%. Kathy Barnett, 19.7%. Dave McCormick is ahead right now, but only, 5% of the vote has been counted so far. So it's still early, but clearly they're encouraged over at Dave McCormick headquarters.
Welcome back to CNN Election Night in America. We can now make a major projection. CNN projects that John Fetterman, the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, is the winner of Pennsylvania's Democratic Senate primary, beating his leading opponent, Congressman Connor Lamb. Fetterman locking up the nomination on the same day that he had a pacemaker implanted after suffering a stroke just days ago. Fetterman will face the winner of Pennsylvania's Republican Senate primary for the seat now held by retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey.
Take a look at this. Doug Mastriani is winning right now in the governor's Republican primary contest in Pennsylvania. This is a significant development. 10% of the vote is in, and he's ahead, by almost 15,000 votes, 30.8% to Lou Barletta's 20.2%. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to stay that way, Michael and Casey, but it's a significant moment. What does it say?
And we have some key race alerts for you now, CNN's Election Night in America. Take a look at this in the Senate Republican primary. Former hedge fund CEO Dave McCormick still in the lead with 31.9% of the vote. He's almost 7,000 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor who has Trump's endorsement with 28.2%. In third place as of right now, firebrand Kathy Barnett, who has 22.1% of the vote. Again, McCormick in the lead right now by about 7,000 votes with only 14% of the vote in. Still a lot of votes to count in the Senate Republican primary in Pennsylvania. Let's look at the gubernatorial primary right now, and look at that. Doug Mastriano, who is Trump endorsed, has taken a strong lead. He has now 35.8% of the vote, more than 26,000 votes ahead of former Congressman Lou Barletta, who has 21.7% of the vote. Bill McSwain, the former U.S. attorney, has 17.1% of the vote. Businessman Dave White, 9.5% of the vote. Doug Mastriano, the Trump-endorsed candidate, has skyrocketed ahead of the competitors, although there is still only 13 or now 14% of the vote that has been counted. Still a lot of votes to count. Let's go down to North Carolina now, if we can, where you see incumbent Congressman Madison Cawthorn has closed the gap with State Senator Chuck Edwards, who is still in the lead. Chuck Edwards, he has 33.9% of the vote. He's about 1,700 votes ahead of incumbent Congressman Madison Cawthorn, who has 31.6% of the vote. A lot more of the vote has been counted in North Carolina's 11th congressional district. 70% of the vote has been counted there. And a reminder, the rules here in this primary race is that if no candidate gets above 30%, they have a runoff. If both get above 30%, then whoever wins gets to obviously wins. And then if one candidate's above 30% and one's under 30%, the one that's over 30% wins. But Madison Cawthorn needs to get over 30% of the vote plus one in order to avoid a runoff. So right now, Madison Cawthorn fighting back with about 30% of the vote to go.
Let's get a key race alert. Let's look in Pennsylvania with 22% of the vote in. You have McCormick at 31.9%, Dr. Mehmet Oz at 29.5%, and Kathy Barnett at 22.9%. Also now in the race for governor in Pennsylvania, you have Doug Mastriano at 41.2%, Lou Barletta at 22.2%, Bill McSwain at 15.1%, and Dave White at 8.2%, again with 22% of the vote now in.
It's election night in America, and CNN can now make a major projection. CNN projects that Doug Mastriano is the winner of the Pennsylvania Republican primary for governor. Mastriano, who received President Trump's endorsement, is a very vocal advocate of Trump's bogus efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Mastriano prevails in a crowded primary race. He will go on to face Democrat Josh Shapiro, the current Attorney General, in the fall. It is election night in America, and we are bringing you now two key race alerts. Let's go now to the Republican Senate primary in Pennsylvania. Former hedge fund manager Dave McCormick still in the lead, much more narrow now, 31.8%. He is about 7,000 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, the television doctor endorsed by Donald Trump, who's at 30.9%, a real squeaker there. Kathy Barnett, who is an insurgent and has been surging recently, is still in third place with 23.5% of the vote. Still, 48% of the vote remains to be counted, so it's anybody's race as of now. But right now, Dave McCormick remains in the lead. Let's go to the North Carolina House race, where incumbent Congressman Madison Cawthorn remains in second place with 31.7% of the vote. In first place, State Senator Chuck Edwards with 33.5% of the vote. He's up by 1,500 votes, more than 1,500 votes. It's election night in America. Let's take a look at another key race alert. Look at this nail-biter in the Senate Republican primary in Pennsylvania. Former hedge fund manager Dave McCormick still in the lead with 32% of the vote. He is 7,388 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor endorsed by Donald Trump, who's at 31.1%. Kathy Barnett, who was surging late in the race, is at 23.7%. That's with 63% of the estimated vote in. Still a lot of votes to be counted. It's election night in America. We have another key race alert for you. Look at these votes in Pennsylvania in the Senate Republican primary. Former hedge fund manager Dave McCormick at 31.6%, just with a narrow lead of 3,472 votes ahead of Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor endorsed by Donald Trump, who's at 31.2%. That margin has been narrowing all night. Kathy Barnett in third place there with 24.2% of the vote. 72% of the vote in, 28% of the vote remains out. It really could be anyone's race. McCormick just barely ahead of Mehmet Oz. All right, John, voting is about to end in two more states, Idaho and Oregon. This hour brings new tests of the endorsement power of President Biden and former President Trump. And right now, we have a key race alert. In Idaho, it is too early to call the Republican contest for governor, where incumbent Brad Little is facing off with the state's lieutenant governor, Janice McGeachin. She's a Trump-backed conservative. It's also too early to call one of the key House races that we're watching tonight in Oregon's 5th congressional district. There, incumbent Democrat Congressman Kurt Schrader is hoping President Biden's support will help him overcome a challenge by progressive Jamie McLeod Skinner. Anderson? We're back, election night in America, primary night. Let's give you some key race alerts right now. If in the Republican Senate primary in Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick, just 1,700 votes ahead right now, 31.4% over Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor endorsed by Donald Trump, who is 31.2%. Kathy Barnett trailing with 24.4% of the vote. That is just a 0.2 percentage point difference, just 1,700 votes of Dave McCormick ahead of Dr. Oz, with still 21% of the vote outstanding. So anything could happen in that race. Let us go out to Idaho now, where the incumbent governor, Brad Little, is 4,651 votes ahead. He has 66.1% of the vote over the lieutenant governor, Janice McGeachin. That's only with 4% of the vote in. Let's take a look now at some interesting House races with Democratic primaries. In Pennsylvania, this is a Democratic primary for a House seat, the 12th Congressional District in the Pittsburgh area. Summer Lee, the progressive state representative, is right now, with 99% of the vote in, 40 votes ahead of Steve Irwin, who is more of an establishment lawyer type. Summer Lee, who could be perhaps a member of the squad, were she to ultimately win this, right now beating the more establishment Steve Irwin, who's an attorney in the Pittsburgh area. Let us go to Oregon now. In Oregon, Jamie McLeod Skinner, she is the progressive candidate, is ahead of incumbent Congressman, centrist Democrat Kurt Schrader. She has 66.7% of the vote. He has 33.3% of the vote. That's with only about a quarter of the vote counted right now. But still, Jamie McLeod Skinner, the progressive, up more than 6,500 votes over Congressman Kurt Schrader, who was endorsed by Joe Biden. It's election night in America, and we have a key race alert for you now. Take a look at the latest out of the Senate Republican primary in Pennsylvania. Dave McCormick, the former hedge fund manager, is at 31.4% of the vote. That's 2,108 votes ahead of his closest competitor, Mehmet Oz, the TV doctor endorsed by Donald Trump, at 31.2% of the vote. That's still 20% of the vote outstanding here. And there only is a 0.2 percentage point of difference. Kathy Barnett in third place with 24.4% of the vote. Still a nail-biter, still anybody's race between McCormick and Oz at this point. Let's go now to the state of Idaho, where incumbent Governor Brad Little is in a Republican primary against his own lieutenant governor. Little is at 65.5% of the vote. He is 5,200 votes ahead of Janice McGeachin, the lieutenant governor, who is at 21.6%. That's with only 5% of the vote in, so that's still very, very early. It's election night in America. We have some key race alerts for you. Take a look at the Pennsylvania Senate Republican primary. Hedge fund manager Dave McCormick still up, 31.3% of the vote for him. He's roughly 2,200 votes ahead of the next closest competitor, the Trump-endorsed television doctor Mehmet Oz, who has 31.1% of the vote. Kathy Barnett, who was surging late in the campaign, apparently not enough, however. She's at 24.5% of the vote. There is still about 15% of the vote to be counted, a nail-biter, really. I want to show you two interesting House Democratic primaries going on. In Pennsylvania, then the 12th Congressional District, which is the Pittsburgh area, Summer Lee, the progressive candidate, is up with 41.7% of the vote. That's about 534 votes ahead of the more establishment Steve Irwin. He's an attorney. She's a state representative. He's at 41.2% of the vote. But that's a very interesting race. And in this, at least the results we have as of now, with 99% of the vote in, the progressive has defeated the more establishment Democratic candidate, which is also something going on in Oregon. Let's go to the Oregon Democratic primary, where the incumbent Congressman, Kurt Schrader, endorsed by Joe Biden, the president, in a rare primary endorsement. Kurt Schrader, who is a centrist, being shellacked as of right now, only about a third of the vote in, but still being shellacked by the progressive candidate, Jamie McLeod Skinner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. There you see, we're all here, the big panel of experts, the dream team, joining me here in New York. I'm Don Lemon. We have breaking news on this election night in America. Results are coming in on a big night of big primaries in 5 states, as a matter of fact. Plenty of election drama, so make sure you fasten your seatbelts. Some of the hottest races, Pennsylvania, of course, in that Commonwealth. the Senate GOP primary. Hedge fund guy Dave McCormick and Trump-endorsed TV doc Dr. Mehmet Oz locked in a tighter than tight battle, if you consider. Look at that. Just 2,600 votes apart. The Trumpiest candidate, really not endorsed by him, Kathy Barnett, trailing despite what at one point looked like a late surge, and people were concerned, the folks in the race, that she might actually win or could win. CNN projects Doug Mastriano, a champion of the bogus big lie of election fraud in 2020, has won the GOP governor's primary there. And talk about high drama as CNN projects John Fetterman wins Pennsylvania's Democratic Senate primary. He is exactly where he didn't expect to be right now, though. Watching from his hospital bed, he's recovering from surgery to get a pacemaker today after he suffered a stroke on Friday. And then there is North Carolina. That's where Madison Cawthorn has conceded to Chuck Edwards. 26-year-old Cawthorn conceding after multiple scandals, everything from bringing a loaded handgun through a TSA checkpoint to accusing his own GOP colleagues of using cocaine and inviting him to an orgy. CNN is ready to project the Republican primary for governor. Brad Little, who's the incumbent, is projected to win over Janice McGee in the lieutenant governor's race there. The lieutenant governor, I should say. So I want to bring in now Harry Enton and Ron Brownstein to talk about that. Look, we always say that it's a nail-biter of a race, but it really is playing out in Pennsylvania right now in the GOP Senate race there. Look at that. Dr. Mehmet Oz has taken the lead for the first time, but it's still neck and neck, 31.2% to 31.2%. Mehmet Oz is 714 votes ahead right now. He doesn't get much closer than that. There you go. Key race alert for you. Dr. Mehmet Oz, his lead is increasing in Pennsylvania in that tight GOP Senate race there. So listen, we have a key race alert. Look at that. Dr. Mehmet Oz increasing his lead over Dave McCormick in the Senate Republican primary in Pennsylvania. Ahead by 2,741 votes at this point. Boy, this is a nail-biter, and it won't be decided tonight. It'll probably be decided in the morning. Who knows? Maybe it'll be decided in the next few minutes while we're on the air. What you think?